This is the Coaching Leader Podcast, a podcast about coaching, leadership, and leading through coaching. And here's your host, Scott Gress.
Welcome to the Coaching Leader Podcast and the second part of our interview with the Rev Dr William Utech. In this part, he talks about raising up pastors, all kinds of different pastors, and how we can learn and support that work and the work of the local congregation so that it reflects the ethnic mix of the local public high school. He talks about the sacrifice that will be required and needed by more mature first-generation Christians so that more people will know Jesus and that the church can continue and the kingdom can expand. And we encourage you to hang on to the end where we're going to talk to you a little bit about Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Coaching Network. So here's the second part of our interview with Dr. William Utech.
Well, I wonder if we could shift a little bit to what's needed now, sort of thing. And you've got kind of a unique perspective, having been involved in district mission work, local mission work, international mission work, but then also spent a considerable time in the seminary. And before we hit record, I mentioned some of my work I'm blessed to be involved in at the seminary, teaching, coaching, not to students, but to supervisors, to their non-residential student supervisors. And just as a sort of a background, that all came about because it's my understanding that as part of a curriculum review and rewrite, they saw the need to have a regular gathering of formation groups, now these are my words, I don't know if the seminary would put it this way, putting students in groups that would sort of be like circuit meetings where they'd be able to talk and interact with one another, but they wanted to help them develop in personal formation performance indicators so that they would develop more than just intellectually in the classroom, but spiritual, vocational, relational, cultural, emotional, physical, etc., sort of measures. And then I came in to help them learn how to do that a little bit more through coaching skills, but then came in to teach coaching as well. And so I think that there's some things happening that people aren't aware of at the seminary, but I know you've given a lot of thought to, where we're at and where we need to be and what would be helpful. So where would you start off on that question?
Well, on the whole seminary education side of things, I've seen both. I've seen both sides. I loved teaching at the seminary, and I loved teaching in the classroom at the seminary. There's something great about being face to face with your students. There's so much more that you can garner in that when everyone is present in the same room. On a screen, you can't, especially if they have their camera turned off, you can't eyes roll back in their head, right?
Yeah. For sure.
By the same token, I've also seen that some of the problems or the issues that we had with students when everyone was a residential student is that some of these guys have personality problems. Some of these guys have financial problems. Some of these guys got all kinds of problems that the church isn't necessarily aware of.
Okay.
Right? When they get placed in the church. Compounding this is as congregations have gotten smaller and older, and they start feeling the financial crunch that comes with getting older and smaller, there's a certain amount of congregational dysfunction that a brand new pastor gets called into that he's not equipped to handle.
Yeah, and
I don't equipped to handle it, and here we are sending our least experienced pastors into our most demanding situations, and we should not be surprised if things blow up. Happen.
And it's my understanding that that's why some of these elements that I had brought up were integrated into the program, that there would be a little bit more resilience on the part of a student because they might not be going in the best of situations.
I remember getting reports from placement committee about the calls that were coming in for our students on any given year. And many of our students became interested in team ministry because they became convinced that chances are that would be a healthier situation to step into as a pastor. It was at the time, and it still is true in our church body, that if you're going to afford a full-time seminary trained pastor, right, salary and benefits, you're going to have approximately 100 people sitting in church every week. And I used to tell, and it got very quiet in the room when I would have this discussion with my students, is that if you get called to a congregation that has fewer than 100, you are, in terms of your finances, at least, in an unsustainable situation. And are you going to commit to doing something about that? And it got, like I say, it got really quiet. And I remember sitting in faculty meetings when we were getting reports about, the sole pastor calls that were coming in for our candidates, and most of them, even at that time, were to situations where there were less than 100 people in church. And I think I think the seminary was probably surprised by that. Sounds like seminaries are getting better at equipping their students for stepping into those situations. But it's still a hard thing when a congregation scrapes together all the money it has, and now we can afford a full-time pastor for just 3 more years unless something changes. That you're asking a lot, aren't you? You're asking a lot of the pastor, you're asking a lot of the congregation, and there's just too much of that going on. A way around that I've seen is when congregations in those kind of situations are made aware of the fact that they can raise up a person from within their own, from a own, and he can serve them as an SMP pastor who learns his theology while he is in ministry, learning in ministry. And I've come to see that for helping those congregations that are in dire straits, and larger congregations adding to their staff in ways that can expand the kingdom, learning in ministry is a great way to go, because when you raise up your own, there's no question that there's going to be a call for him at the end of it, right? Everybody knows this guy. My experience with SMP students is that they are more mature, they are more capable, they are more eager learners overall, and they just have a maturity about them that only comes with experience. And most residential graduates don't have experience. They just don't.
Yeah.
I think that both are good. Both are probably necessary if you want a healthy ministerium, right?
Yep.
But I think we're kind of missing the boat in our church body when we when we don't grow the distance programs as fast and as large as they could probably be grown.
Yeah, there's certainly, back in another century and many decades ago, I got a marketing degree. There's certainly a market out there for people who are tired of learning theology on the street or wherever they're going to click on the internet, and they want to go to their church body and go deeper into theological education.
And literally sit at the feet of some of the wisest people on the face of the earth. Yeah, when it comes, yeah, absolutely.
There's a place for that, and whether that turns into a degree or a certificate or whatever, boy, there's certainly room for those kinds of educational options, aren't there?
Right, right. And at the same token, there is a way to export that into a local congregation where a guy is already serving. This makes the most sense when it comes to the Ethnic Immigrant Institute of Theology. These leaders, these ministry leaders are leading because they believe God has called them to it, right? They've planted new churches, and there's just no way that they're going to be able to walk away from that. They want to learn more about Jesus. They want to learn more about the Bible. Actually, I think when push comes to shove, they really want to become Lutheran because they know that we have something to offer that they're not getting anywhere else, and they want to learn how to translate that so that their people get it too. They're some of the strongest, most committed leaders, gospel communicators that I know. And if we make it, we should be making it less difficult for them to get theological education rather than more. And so, and they'll raise up leaders. Leaders raise up leaders.
Yeah.
And we should be facilitating that, though, the theological education of these leaders in every way, shape, and form that it can be delivered to facilitate their gospel ministry, not to facilitate our institutions or our agendas, but to facilitate what they're doing in their communities and in their culture and in their context. So,
yeah, in your article, it's available online. Do you love your traditions more than your children? Or what's the other title? The multi-ethnic church for the sake of our children,
right.
grandchildren in the world. You have some wonderful suggestions in how to do that, just real practical stuff. The relationship between the Anglo congregation and the ethnic groups or congregations. Can you say a little bit more about that?
I mean, we have so here in Minnesota South, the district includes the whole of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area and like the southern third of the state, which includes like Rochester, where Mayo Clinic is, and Mankato, Minnesota. And there are lots of food processing plants in southern Minnesota, which are magnets for immigrant workers. They come here, and it's their entry level jobs, right? And so a person can move here and start making a good wage, a livable wage, very soon thereafter. And there's opportunities for that person and for his or her family that they didn't have from wherever they came from, right? And many of them come here, they're Christians already, and there's a number of them that feel called to start new gospel ministries. So they're motivated. They have a high level of trust and reliance on the Lord of the church, and they're usually quite gifted communicators in their first language, and so new churches start popping up, What they don't have is brick and mortar resources. They don't have understanding of the predominant culture. They don't have uh, trusted friends from the predominant culture to serve as guides to help them, kind of get through the day and the week and all the legalese and the red tape and how do I get a driver's license? I don't know. How do I practice? What do I do? Where do I go? Our people can do that. Our people can be the help that our immigrant brothers and sisters need. We can help them learn English. We can help them pass their driver's examination. We can provide space for them. We can start rubbing shoulders with them and start building a second generation culture that is not what the immigrant congregations were, not what we were, but something new that is multi-ethnic right from the get-go. And when I contend that when the church on earth starts looking like the church in heaven is described, that is a very attractive thing to the people who are on the outside looking in. If as Martin Luther King said, the most segregated hour of the day is 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. If we don't do something intentional about that, then our talk about Jesus being the Lord of all and everyone stands level at the foot of the cross and red and yellow, black and white, we're all precious in his sight. If we don't look that way, then we're less than convincing. So I think it's time, especially in the areas like here in the Twin Cities, and there's other places, of course, where there's a huge immigrant population. And if our churches don't become intentional about thinking, planning, and doing stuff that help them to start looking like the public high school that's closest to them.
Yeah.
If we're not intentional about that, then we're going to remain, as many of our congregations, our urban congregations, are little pockets of white people that have nothing to do, islands of white people that have nothing to do with the community that surrounds them. And that's not a wholesome gospel witness.
Yeah, the assumption is they're just a little club that does their thing and they're irrelevant to us, and we drive by and we don't even notice.
So when we had one of our Anglo congregations open their doors to one of our immigrant congregations, that immigrant pastor is going to become the leader of both congregations in time, and that church will ultimately become multi-ethnic.
Yeah, that beautiful second generation opening the door to the third, etc., can go on. I tell you, just a personal story. When I first got to South Florida, we had a Haitian Lutheran congregation, training the pastor, meeting on our property. And sure, there were cultural differences that were tough, but in many ways, they sang louder, they dressed better, they showed up more. And I tell you what, the daughter of the pastor now plays the keyboard at the congregation where I worship, and I just get choked up every time. And it's amazing. But like you say, that they're other ethnic groups. They're open to the gospel. There's an opportunity to expand the kingdom of God, and so that's really an open door for possibilities for the local Anglo congregation, isn't there?
Oh yeah, yeah. And if people, if we just walk by faith and not by sight, I mean, it's scary. Every time you start working across cultures, it not only gets scary, it gets messy.
That's a kind way to put it, but it's true.
German Lutherans do not like messes. We don't. We just don't.
No.
You're not going to avoid it at all. But it's worth the mess. It really is. And it's going to be hardest on the people the first generation immigrants who are coming in, and the Anglo congregation, to where it's going to be toughest because they're both first generation when it comes to getting along and seeing eye to eye and working together. But their kids or their grandkids are going to get it. And so we have to sacrifice. Those who are mature in the faith always sacrifice, right? For those who are less mature in the faith, so that they can grow and become all that God is calling them to be. And if our longtime old term members are indeed mature in the faith, they should be the first one to sacrifice.
There you go. That's a beautiful word. Well, we've been at this for a little while. Do you have any final words or insights or thoughts that you'd like to share as we sort of wrap up for today?
Oh man, I pray that we spend less time being fearful and circling the wagons, and more time trusting the Spirit, the Lord of the Church, to guide us and lead us, and so that we're willing to take risks and put some of our resources on the lines for the sake of those who aren't here yet. No one's going to care 20 years from now if our church building was well kept until it closed. What they will care about is was your baptismal font used? Did you bring light into dark places? Did you invest in the next generation? So that's my prayer, and that's what I'm still around to facilitate. To help facilitate, I think. So, and you too.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if people wanted to connect with you or get in touch with you and keep the conversation going, talk further, how could they do that? What's a good way to connect with you?
You can always connect to me by email.
Mm-hmm.
That is lowercase UTECHW at gofast.am.
Gofast.am?
.am, yeah.
Okay.
Gofast.
You got it.
I'd be happy. Or I'm also available on LinkedIn too, which is where you can download the articles if you're so inclined.
Yeah, I would encourage folks to do that. The one I'd mentioned before, Multi-Ethnic Church for the Sake of the Children, Grandchildren, and the World, and The End of Seminary Education, Healthy and Flourishing Congregations. Great read, great education and suggestions, sanctified suggestions, as it says there.
It does work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the time. God's blessings to you.
God blessings to you too, Scott. Thanks for the opportunity. We'll see you around.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. William Utech, for sharing with us your wisdom and the wisdom of your experience. And I would encourage everyone to connect with him either by email or on LinkedIn, where you can indeed download his papers. And I'm sure that you'll find something helpful and encouraging there. And I would also invite you to connect with us at scottgress.com or especially at lcmscoaching.com, where you can learn about coaching. You can find a good coach who is certified by the International Coaching Federation, and where you can connect with other coaches. We just had an online meeting where we got to know some of the folks in the network, and I got to tell you, I hung up encouraged by the wonderful people, the mature Christians and servant-hearted folks who make up the network who showed up on that online meeting. Well, we pray for you and your leadership and what God can be doing through you and your ministry, whatever that is. And we look forward to talking with you next time on The Coaching Leader.